No.
Okay, we are ready.
I have,
So I'm going to just do an introduction and basically a couple questions, and you tell us about your military experience.
I don't have any military
Oh, you do
experience.
too.
Come on.
Okay.
You know how long ago this was? I don't remember where I was 58 years ago.
This is an interview with Fred Stay at the New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York, December 16th, 2002, approximately 1 p.m. Interviewer is Michael Russert. Could you tell me your full name, your place of birth, and date of birth, please?
My name is Frederick R. Stay. I was born in Schenectady, New York, in January the 30th, 1923.
Your birthday coming up.
Yes, next month.
All great people were born in January. I was born in January too.
Were you?
Yes. So, could you tell me your educational background prior to the war, to your military service?
I graduated from Draper High School, and after that I went to vocational training school in Schenectady. And after that I worked for the Machwa Company, which is an affiliate of the GE Works, I guess, in Schenectady.
Do you remember, what were your memories of the hearing of what happened on December 7th, 1942? Where were you? What do you remember?
What I remember is I was visiting my girlfriend. And I can remember hearing the announcement over the radio, and outside of that, I don't remember too much in particulars, but I can remember everybody was just shocked, and it was a few months after that, when my brother out of the clear blue sky, which, by the way, I had 4 brothers, and I had 7 sisters. I'm the oldest of 12. My kid brother says to me, he got up one evening out of the clear blue sky and says, "Mom and Dad," he says, "I'm going to go down and join the Marine Corps." So, of course, he never discussed it with me, and we were pretty close. And I just got up and just said, "Well, if you're going, I'm going too." So I can remember him, he was only 17 years old, so he had to get permission from my mother and father. They had to sign permission for him to join. And we went down to the recruiting depot, I think it was in Albany, New York. And after we got there, they told my brother he didn't weigh enough. He didn't pass the physical. So they told him to go home for a couple of weeks. And he went home, all I can remember was eating lots of bananas and lots of potatoes, and trying to put that weight on. And anyway, we went back in a couple of more weeks, and he passed the physical. And we ended up with a friend of ours, which I'm sorry to say, up until recently, I almost forgot about him. His name was George Stern. He was a friend of my brothers and I, and we, the 3 of us were shipped off to Parris Island, South Carolina, together.
Why did you pick the Marine Corps? Because your brother did, or do you know why?
No, we picked the Marine Corps because we just respected the Marine Corps a lot, and we just didn't want to win the Army, be drafted, and go where they wanted us to go. We wanted to have something to say about what we were going to do and where we were going. Of course, it wasn't too long before we joined the Marine Corps that we never could have gotten in the Marine Corps, because at one time you had to be 6 foot tall, and they kept lowering the height down to 5'10", 5'8". I'm only 5'5", so they must have been desperate. That's all I can say.
So when you went to Paris Island, how did you end up in the Marine Air Wing?
After my brother and I completed our training in boot camp, they gave us a lot of, if I remember right, they gave us a chance to take a lot of tests, and I don't know why I ended up being chosen to go to school. The only choice I had was to either be an aerial mechanic as an aerial mechanic or an ordnanceman. And of course, at that time, being young and foolish, I said, I don't want to be a mechanic. I'm in the Marine Corps to do some fighting. I want guns, so I chose ordnance school. And my brother was part of the platoon that remained. If I'm not mistaken, you'll have to forgive me because a lot of this stuff, I think we went to the rifle range at Camp Lejeune. And he remained at Camp Lejeune, and they sent me on to school. I went to, I'm trying to think of where, Memphis, Tennessee. They have a big naval school there. In fact, I remember the base being so big, I can remember they had 5 theaters. It was like a big city in itself, After I went, they sent me to ordnance school. They picked out a certain number of guys, I guess depending on what kind of a mark you got in your classes. There was a certain number of people who were picked to go to gunnery school. So they sent me to Norman, Oklahoma, where we had all the gunnery classes, and gunnery school, there's the ground gunnery, and I can remember being there and being so cold at night that we used to put papers between our blankets to keep warm, and yet it was awful hot in the daytime. And then I went from there, they sent me to Jacksonville, Florida, where I flew in my first airplane.
Did you have any desire to fly prior to this?
No, in fact, before that, I always said I was always going to keep one foot on the ground. But I ended up in the Air Corps, and we had aerial gunnery practice in PBYs. They're the planes with the big bubble eyes on the side, and we used to shoot at aerial targets with the socks. They'd have a tow plane that would tow a sock out there and go alongside you, and your pilot would pull up and you'd shoot from one of these blisters with a free gun. And I remember it being cold. We used to land the airplanes, and of course they had wheels that they used to put down, and when they got up to the ramp, they'd put the wheels down and they just pull the plane up onto the ramp, onto the shore. I'm trying to remember. I never heard too much from my brother. We wrote to each other, but not very often. And I got a letter from my mother and father telling me that after I had left my brother, the Marine Corps came around asking for volunteers for the Marine paratroopers, and my brother said he was getting bored, so he he volunteered for the paratroopers and went through all the paratrooper training and earned his wings. And then they shipped his outfit to California on their way overseas to the Pacific, and they disbanded the paratroopers, and he ended up in the infantry. Last I remember, he was in several conflicts on New Britain Island, which would be the southern tip of the same island that my outfit, when we got over there, was bombing on the other end, Riball Harbor. And I guess he was in several conflicts and lived through them, and I got a picture of him in a rest area. A mutual friend of ours was in the service, met him, and took his picture and sent me a copy of the picture. Of course, later on, he was in the engagement at Peleliu Island and was killed in action there at that time. In fact, he was just 20 years old.
Where were you stationed after Florida?
They shipped me up to Cherry Point, North Carolina. And they commissioned the first two PBY squadrons, 413 and 423. I think that was in March of 43. And of course, I ended up in the second squadron, 423. And we trained up and down the Atlantic coast. And from Cherry Point, they transferred our squadron to Edenton, North Carolina, a small airfield in Edenton, North Carolina. We did a lot of training there. Then they shipped our squadron across the United States to I'm trying to think what This is where your mind becomes blank.
Well, you don't have to give us the exact place. It's okay.
Sometimes when you get my age, your mind just goes flying out the window, your train of thought.
Yeah.
They took a certain number of the crews and they flew the airplanes across country, and the rest of the crews and ground forces, ground crews and that went by train across country. I happened to be in the section that went by train. I can remember it was a long and dirty trip. El Centro, California is where we ended up. And we did a lot of aerial training there, aerial gunnery, aerial practice bombing, navigation hops. Because as I found out later, a lot of our pilots were only young kids too. They were only in their 20s. In fact, my co-pilot was younger than I was. And most of the aircraft that people associate with Marines are single-engine planes, like the fighter planes, dive bomber planes, torpedo planes. And these were the first twin-engine medium bombers the Marine Corps ever had. In fact, there's a lot of people even today don't realize that the Marines Marine pilots flew bombers, twin-engine bombers, medium bombers. So our pilots were also getting a lot of practice and a familiarization with the plane.
What plane was this?
This was the Army's Billy Mitchell B-25. And of course, our Navy designation was the PBJ. We flew all kinds of training flights in El Centro, California. A lot of it was done over the Salton Sea, over the Grand Canyon. I saw a lot of beautiful country out there while we were in training. And then we got word to be shipped overseas, and they, I think we were shipped out of we left California. They stripped our planes down of all their armor plating, all the equipment that wasn't necessary to make the flight, and they put extra gas tanks in so they could fly from California to the Hawaiian Islands. Again, I was in the section that went by ship. I spent 19 days on a converted aircraft carrier, full of supplies, full of airplanes, but you couldn't take off because the decks were just chock full of airplanes. And after our planes arrived in Hawaii, they refitted them again with the proper armor plating and machine guns and all that kind of stuff that they took off, ordnance. And from there, the planes ended up in God, I knew I should have made some notes. I'm trying to think of where we ended up. I feel, can this thing be edited?
Does this mean after you...
I could just stop it for a minute or so.
Yeah, why don't you...
Okay.
Our squadron ended up in the New Hebrides Islands, where the flight crews and the planes joined up with the rest of the ground crew, and we did a lot of training, a lot of flight training, navigational trainings, practice bombing for for the missions that we'd be carrying on later. And then from New Hebrides, they shipped us up to the Sterling Islands, and I think it was from the Sterling Islands that we had our first actual combat mission. It was, if I remember right, it was a medium altitude bombing mission, which had roughly around 9 planes, and that, all I can remember is it was my first experience with anti-aircraft fire. And all I can remember is, even to this day, is looking out the side of my, of course I flew in the tail of the airplane. I couldn't see where we were going, but I could only see where we'd been. I looked out the side of my plexiglass window, and all I could see was this great big wall of these big black puffs of smoke. And it was, I got to admit, it was quite scary. And if I remember right, we were lucky that several planes got hit, but we didn't lose anybody. But that was my first experience with somebody shooting at me. And then we did some ground cover at Bougainville Island, ground support, I should say. And then from Sterling Island, they moved us up to Green Island, which was just a little horseshoe-shaped atoll, and it was just big enough for, I think we had a fighter strip there, that the Navy had some F-4U fighter planes and a bomber strip. And from there we spent the rest of the 1944, from May until December or January, doing all kinds of missions around Rabaul Harbor, which was at that time, a few months before that, was considered the Japanese Pearl Harbor. They had a big harbor, which was now full of sunken ships and what have you. It was surrounded by 5 Japanese airfields. And our job was to harass the garrison that was left there on the island, which was, I heard, was 60 to 70,000 Japanese were stranded on the island, and it was our job to make sure that they didn't get resupplied. And we kept the airfields peppered with holes and made sure none of the ships could get in either at night. We spent most of our missions were at night missions.
Now, what does it mean when in this article about you, it tells that you did the job of night hecklers and blockaders? What does that mean?
That's just what it means. What I just said, we spent our time. Most of the missions were at night, and they would send a plane over to Rabaul Harbor, and you'd have 10, 15, 100-pound bombs, and you just circle that area, and whenever you would see lights or any kind of action down below, boats, or maybe on the roads, you just go over there and drop a bomb and just harass them all night long. And when you left, there was another airplane out there came in, and all night long there was an airplane flying over that harbor and that city. That's why they called us the hecklers of Rabaul Harbor. And of course, we spent a lot of missions. We spent in the daytime also. We did a lot of strafing runs and skip bombing runs all along.
What do you mean by skip bombing?
You fly low over the water or the land, and you fly low over the water at your target, and then you release your bomb before you get to the target, and it hits the water or the ground and bounces. It was a great way to hit the side of a ship with a bomb. But I can remember several times doing that with these buildings on these islands. All they were was grass shacks, and some of the bombs would end up going right through the shacks without exploding. They explode right through the walls. But yeah, that's what skip bombing is. And of course, strafing runs is you just come down low and all guns firing, and drop bombs on either ships or bridges, buildings. And I can remember one time we had a target that we were supposed to hit, and of course there was quite a few mountains out there on New Ireland and Rabaul, but New Ireland especially. If your target was on one side of the mountain, of course you learn this from experience. The first couple of times our pilots would go in, they'd head mostly directly to the target, and but they'd be waiting for you with anti-aircraft fire, ground fire, because you're flying awful low. We learned from that experience that you start on the other side of the mountain and you start to glide into your target and come around the mountain from the opposite side, and all the time you're coming down. I can remember one trip we went on with the plane. You're going so fast, of course, at that time 300 miles an hour was fast, but the whole plane is vibrating. And when we got back to the base, some of the bolts that held the top turret, the gunner turret, some of those bolts were all sheared off, just from the vibration. And
when you talk about being a medium altitude, what altitude?
8,000 to 12,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it was around 10 because once you get up around 10,000 feet, you have to use an oxygen mask. Mm-hmm. And we never used them too much that I can remember. All I can remember is freezing to death. you'd be on the ground and your back would be all wet from perspiration. And then once you got up in the air, you get up there, you start getting up there between 5,000 and 10,000 feet. It gets pretty cold.
Did you ever wear the leather jackets like the bomber units in the
Oh yeah.
European did? Did you,
In fact, I still had my bomber jacket and I wore it out when I got discharged.
did your plane have a name? Did you have nose art?
No, from what I understand, the Navy or the Marine Corps didn't allow that. Putting all these insignias on the side up, all they had was a number.
Did you always fly the same plane?
No. If a mission called for 6 planes, they got the 6 planes that were ready to fly, and some of those ground crews, the mechanics and the ordnance people, they just worked round the clock, 24 hours a day, trying to keep enough planes ready to have enough planes for the missions that were assigned to us. We basically started out with like 12 to 15 airplanes per squadron. I don't think you ever had 12 or 15 planes that were always ready. There was always some planes getting checks. You had a certain number of hours, and I can't remember what they were, 30-hour checks, 60-hour checks. And of course, the 100-hour check is where they practically take the plane apart and put it back together again. So, no, we never, a certain crew didn't have a certain plane that he flew all the time. They had a mission, say you had a mission with 6 planes or 9 planes. Whatever crews were, the crews that were in line to go up, the six to 9 crews that were ready, they were just assigned to a plane. So we had 7 planes that ended up flying over 100 missions, the planes themselves.
Your jacket, did it ever have any unit patches or anything on it, or just a
No,
plain leather?
just a plain leather jacket. I didn't even have my name on it. And I could have because it was mine. But yeah, the old familiar jacket, I remember wearing that several years after I got discharged. In fact, I wore it out.
How many missions did you fly?
Well, our crew flew about 80 different military assignments, but I was credited with 40 combat missions. And don't ask me exactly what they call a combat mission, because as far as I'm concerned, 80 assignments was over enemy territory or over the ocean someplace. But we did all kinds of missions. We did submarine searches. Sometimes you'd be in the air 4, 5, 6 hours. Just looking for enemy submarines, or maybe a fighter pilot or another bomber got shot down or disappeared, and they'd send out a certain number of planes to search for these people. It just some of the flights you did, they just didn't consider combat missions. And of course, I don't know how they could say that. You're over enemy territory. They could shoot at you anytime, or you could end up in a drink. We lost several planes that nobody knows what happened to them.
Was your plane ever hit?
Yeah, I can remember one time specifically. I can't remember exactly what type of mission we were on, but I think we were either on a target of opportunity mission, which means that we did a lot of that over New Ireland. You just pick out whatever target you want. They'd send the pilot out on a trip, and you could drop bombs or shoot anything that you thought was enemy. Boats, bridges. And I can remember after we got done on one of these low-level flights, the pilot saying the plane didn't act right. And he said he thought that we were hit. So we ended up landing at Emerald Island. It was like an emergency landing at another island. And I can remember landing there, and we spent the overnight there, and they had all their mechanics and their ordnance people go over our airplane and check it out. And I don't recall whether they ever found any, I don't recall whether they ever found anything wrong or not, but anyhow, we ended up getting back in the plane the next day and flying back to Green Island. Outside of that, we were very fortunate. Our crew was very fortunate. One of the experiences I do remember, though, when you're flying in these nightly heckling hops over you're flying up there, it's pitch black. And of course you're always observing everything that's going on around you. And all of a sudden you'd see one of these big fingers of spotlight, you know. Then there'd be another one. Then there'd be 2 or 3 of them. And the next thing you know, they're all looking for you up in the sky. Finally, once they pick you up in those spotlights, it was amazing to me. You could sit there and read a magazine. That's how bright it was. You know, you felt like you were pretty naked up there. I'll tell you. That always stood out in my mind.
And that's when the flak would start, once they...
Yeah, well, you couldn't see at night. You couldn't see, but you're wondering what's going to happen next. Are you going to get hit or what? You know, but we never did. But other planes did, though, that were on those hops. I can remember. I don't remember all the details, but I remember this one plane coming in. In fact, I think he's listed in our act casualties. Willie T. Phillips, he was a tail gunner. I can remember, I wasn't there when the plane came in, but they tell me they took an ammunition can, because the ammunition can is metal lined on the inside, and they remember flushing out the blood and stuff where he got hit out of the plane and letting it all drain into this can, and they had 100 and some odd shrapnel holes from the trailing edge of the wing to the tail. And they repaired that plane and had it flying within days. But our sheet metal people were busy all the time, patching up holes, keeping the planes flying. We just had a marvelous bunch of ground crew members that kept those planes flying.
Were you scheduled for, did you ever do any bombing runs, move north toward Okinawa or toward mainland Japan?
No,
I know you were short range bombers.
Yeah, later squadrons that took our place, and they came after our squadron. Most of our squadron members were shipped back to the States.
When were you shipped back?
I was shipped back in, I got the sheet, you got the sheet right there. I think it's January of 1945.
Okay, yes. See that.
There was 20 or 25 crew members shipped back to the States, and then there was a later shipment. I think a couple months later of officers, pilots and co-pilots, officers that were shipped back.
So you were stateside when they dropped the bomb?
Yeah.
What was your feeling and reaction to that?
Well, at that time, and even today, I think it was the right decision that Truman made when he dropped that bomb, because I think it saved a lot of young lives, especially American lives. I thought it was the right decision at the time. I was glad to see it. Of course, you know, your feelings change as you know, the war is long gone. I don't know what the Japanese thought then, but we didn't like them very well. When I was a young fella, it was nothing worse than a Japanese soldier. Of course, today you kind of mellow a little bit, you know. They got their veterans, we got our veterans, and I just see here not long ago on TV where they had some of the Japanese admirals that were in the Battle of Midway. where we lost an aircraft carrier, and they lost what, three or four? You know, I'm sorry to see that a lot of innocent people had to die, but I think it was the right decision at the time. I think it saved a lot of lives.
When were you discharged?
And, February 18th, 1946.
And did you, when you were back stateside, did you do any training or of others?
Yeah, when I got transferred back to the States, I spent 30 days home with my mother and father and family. And after that, they sent me back to Cherry Point, and they put me in a dive bombing outfit, an SBD Navy dive bomber. And I trained for about 10 months in that plane, in preparation to be sent overseas again when the war was ended. I was kind of glad to see that. I was used to flying in a plane that had two engines. At least if one engine got knocked out, we could possibly make it back to base with the other engine. In a dive bomber, when you lose that engine, that's it. It was just the pilot and the rear seat gunner. That's what I was training for the last 10 months.
What was your reaction to VJ Day?
Well, like everybody else, you were just happy to see it, you know.
After you left the service, now you went into the reserves for a while, I saw?
No,
No? Okay.
no. I was in the reserve while I was in the Marine
Oh,
Corps,
okay.
which means I was in the Marine Corps
Yeah,
until,
okay. After the war, did you join any veterans organizations? Or do you
well,
now?
I belong to the American Legion and I belong to the VFW.
Mhm.
No.
Did you ever attend any reunions of your unit, or did you ever keep in contact with any of them?
No, I never went to any of our reunions, but I used to get their brochure and letters. They used to notify everybody every year when the reunion dates were. I've always been a little sorry that I never went to one of them, at least. But I never did. And right now I don't feel I'm capable of making that trip. My wife couldn't make it, and I don't feel I ought to go without her. But I do, once I made contact here about 3 years ago with several members of my squadron who are active in our reunions. I'm in contact with them regularly. I write to them often.
Mm-hmm.
We send pictures, we write back and forth. I always, my turret gunner, John Phillips, he was from Philadelphia, and 3 of my sons lived in New Jersey for 10 or 15 years, and we used to go visit all the while, and I always said I was always going to look John up, but I never got around to doing it. So finally, my daughter-in-law, who happens to work in Pennsylvania, she works for the state of Pennsylvania, she knew I was interested in finding John, so she started looking for him. And to make a long story short, she found John through the telephone book. And it just so happened he didn't live in Philadelphia anymore, but he moved across the river to New Jersey, and he lived 15 minutes from her house. So all these years, I'd been running back and forth, my wife and I, visiting our 3 sons in New Jersey, and here John only lived 15 minutes away. So when I found that out, when she found John for me and told me about him, the next trip down to New Jersey, my son and I called him up and made plans, and we went over and met him and his wife, and had coffee, and had a nice reunion. I brought all my albums and magazines that I had, and John never saved any of his. He either didn't save them or he lost them. So we had a nice evening, and I had planned on revisiting John again, but several months later I got a word from his wife that John passed away. He had a lot of physical problems the last time I met him, and I finally made contact with my pilot, and I sent pictures and wrote back and forth to him. He called me on the phone several times. He was 83 years old, and he just passed away, by the way. He just passed away here a couple of months ago. And I got in touch with my co-pilot, who lives in Massachusetts, and as far as I know, Ed is still alive, but he's got a lot of physical problems too. And I finally made contact. The last person in our crew that I made contact with was our bombardier navigator. I finally made contact with him, and he was a Minnesota boy. He was 83 years old. And he just passed away a month and a half ago. So I lost two of my crew in the last couple months, and of course, my turret gunner, John, I lost him a year ago. So as far as I know, there's only two of us left, and that's my co-pilot and myself.
Did you ever use the GI Bill at all?
Yes. I'm not sure just how long after I got discharged, but approximately a year after I got discharged, I see the Waterfleet Arsenal was hiring machine operators, and I went down and applied for a job and got a job as a machine operator. And I can remember meeting this fella there in the next machine, and we became pretty good friends. And he got a hold of me one day. He said, "Hey, Fred," he said, "I hear you're holding an examination down at the post office in Albany for apprentice machinists. What do you say we go down and take the test?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So anyway, we both went down and took the machinist test, and ended up passing the test. And I took the 4-year machinist apprentice course in the Waterfleet Arsenal. So that was at least four years of work that I was sure of, which was important at the time because they had 2 layoffs while I was an apprentice. And if it hadn't been for my being an apprentice, I probably would have lost my job. But anyway, I graduated as a machinist, and I spent almost 20 years there. And I retired in 1978. I was 55 years old. Still had a boy in college. But I was determined that I was going to retire while I was still able to do something with my life. They weren't going to carry me out in a stretcher, you know. Or I wasn't going to go out and...
How do you think your military service changed or affected your life?
I'm sure that it has. It just you kind of learn to kind of take things as they come and do the best you can, regardless of the hurdles. I met my wife, and we had 3 sons, and they're not only my sons, but they're my best friends. Our first 7 grandchildren were boys. She never said too much, but I'm sure my wife would have liked to have had a girl. And finally, our middle boy, John, wife presented us with a daughter, and she'll be 12 years old here next year. And so I've got 7 great grandsons and wonderful granddaughter. And we're all very close. In fact, I just got done on a 2-week hunting trip that I spent with 2 of my grandsons and my oldest son. And after that, we came back from our hunting trip in Illinois. I came back to New Jersey, where my wife was staying while I was on this hunting trip, and we spent Thanksgiving there. So I've had a nice last 3 weeks.
Okay, now you brought some pictures. You want to tell us about them? This one here, if you could hold it up to the camera.
Okay. Well, this is a picture that was taken, I think, around March 1943. When our squadron was first commissioned, and this was, I can remember our squadron lining up for this group picture.
Okay, got it.
This is a picture of my crew that I flew all my missions with.
Now whereabouts are you in the picture?
I'm at the lower right-hand corner, kneeling in the front. The guy next to me is my turret gunner, John Phillips.
Okay.
This fella here is Sergeant Schaefer. He's our radio man. I gotta see who's who. This fella here in the middle, that's Lieutenant Powers. He's our co-pilot, and this is our pilot, Lieutenant Griffiths.
Okay.
Oh, I love this picture. This is an actual picture of one of our planes at one of the missions, taken from one of the other planes that was in the formation by one of our squadron photographers. This is a six plane medium altitude formation, either over Naval Harbor or New Ireland. I'm not sure where.
Hold up each one of those.
Yeah. This is a picture of a few what I call minor casualties, plane casualties.
Okay.
This is a picture of Rabaul Harbor and the city. And around the fringe of that harbor and city was 5 Japanese airfields.
Okay.
This is another picture of one of our planes high above the clouds over Rabaul Harbor.
Okay.
And this is just a 3-picture. The bottom picture showing my tail position in a B-25 and a PBJ.
Okay.
One up there.
Yeah. And this is a picture of 6 of the 7 planes. Each flew 100 combat missions. And each bomb on that plane represents a mission, and There's over 100 on some of them.
Okay.
Okay, do you have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.